Welcome with me, if you will, to Wider Circles, Sarenth Odinsson. And this is not how I usually do things, but Sarenth's going to introduce himself and he's going to open things up for us with a prayer. Take it away, Sarenth.
Thank you. Hail to the holy ancestors beneath the ground. Hail to the holy ones in our blood and our spirit. Thousands of generations behind us. Hail to the holy ancestors, the trees that dot the earth, the molten core of Yorth. Hail to the holy ancestors. Hail, holy ones, wherever you're found, by choice, by adoption, by lineage, by blood. Help us in these trying times. Help us to do well. Help us to be well. Help us to live in good reciprocity with you. Wherever we walk, wherever we roam, be with us. Be with us. Be with us. And bless us. Bless us. Bless us. For we will one day be among you. And we will help the next generation together. Hail to the ancestors. Best to Heil.
Best to Heil. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, tell our listeners who you are, Sarenth.
All right. So I am Sarenth Odinsson. I am a heathen, the Gothi of Mimis Brunner Kindred, and I'm a heathen spirit worker, and I'm also a priest of Othin and Anubis. I compiled and edited the devotional anthology Calling to Our Ancestors, which was released by Asphodel Press, and I contributed to several devotional books, including those of Bibliotheca Alexandria, excuse me. I hold a BS in psychology from Eastern Michigan University, and together with James Stovall and Caitlin Stormbreaker, I host the podcast Around the Grandfather Fire, and I co-host the podcast Three Pagans on Tap with Malik Odinsson and Carr of Three Pagans and a Cat. If you want to hit me up, you can hit me at sarenth@gmail.com or through my blog, sarenth.wordpress.com, where I write on theology, religion, and sustainable living. My Patreon for my writing and my spirit work is patreon.com/Sarenth Odinsson.
Thank you so much, Sarenth. I was worried I was going to butcher that, and you deserved so much better.
Well, thank you.
That's the honest. That's transparency. So how are you doing?
Overall, pretty good, actually. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for being here. Let me give you the proper welcome and the thanks that you deserve. Much gratitude.
Thank you for inviting me. I've been looking forward to this.
Oh, yeah, definitely. You have a lot to bring here. That's as I was preparing for our chat. I was like, wow, this might be the entire episode. So we'll see. Well, why don't we open things up by what's keeping you busy these days? What are you up to?
Well, work, my day job, and well, technically night job. I'm a midnighter. But also what keeps me really busy is being a father and a husband, and also the ongoing work through my Patreon. That includes writing, and it includes now video because they hit the first stretch goal.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And so what really keeps me busy a lot of the times is the content I'm producing, whether it's for YouTube and the Patreon videos every month, or it's TikTok that I've just gotten to. Thanks, Jim, you rotten bastard.
Oh, I'm coming for him soon, too.
Good. Please throw him under every bus.
Right. Right. That's for the TikTok.
Mm-hmm. And what also keeps me busy is the ongoing work I have with Around the Grandfather Fire and Three Pagans on Tap. Those are both a boatload of fun and really fulfilling for me.
Awesome. Very cool. So, and I know we're going to dig into a little bit more of that for anybody who might not be familiar in just a little bit. But I guess at this point in time, we're going to travel backwards. We're going to move back and we're going to take a look at your origin story and whatever that however you want to frame that, whatever that looks like, whatever you want to share with us.
So for roughly the first 16 years of my life, I was a very devoted Roman Catholic. I encountered my first pagan my first year of high school, and she was a pretty good friend of mine for the first couple of years, and we lost contact shortly after. But she really opened up my eyes to the wider world of religion because she was a pagan, and I had a very adverse reaction to a pentacle at one point. And she said, well, you really need to sit down and really check yourself and educate yourself because you're coming off as pretty ignorant. And I did not like that feeling. So I said, well, fine, damn it. And the the internet had just really become a big thing. So I started looking online and went, oh, it's a lot more deep and a lot more nuanced than what I thought it was. Oh no, it's stirring something in me. I'm not sure I like this.
Nice. Yeah.
So at that point, I started hearing the call of a goddess, and being that I was still in the house, I really didn't feel like I could answer it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was still trying to make my Catholicism work with this burgeoning new reality of God's banging down my door and polytheism being right there going, hey. So I was trying to make it work.
And that can be quite the challenge to make those two things coexist. I mean, for some people, that's their path.
Mm-hmm.
For others, it's just too difficult to make the two things mesh.
I mean, for me, one thing that having talked with a lot of pagans over the time I've been in the community, something that a lot of folks talk about is how they didn't get anything out of Christianity, and it was not that way for me. I had powerful mystical experiences with God, with the Holy Spirit, with the angels. So it wasn't like I was devoid of that, but I was being called in a totally different direction. It wasn't that I wasn't getting spiritual fulfillment out of Catholicism. That's not where I was meant to stay.
Right.
And that doesn't sit well with my Catholic family. But
right.
Such is life. But I eventually ended up converting to paganism officially when I became a pagan in Samhain of 2004.
Okay.
So at that point, I started a path which is mostly Wiccan and inspiration, but I still didn't feel quite connected with the whole notion of gods as archetypes. It felt really odd to me, especially coming out of a religion where God was very real, very individual, and you were supposed to have a relationship with him. It felt very odd to suddenly go to this mindset of, well, they're just archetypes. Well, I didn't just leave salvation behind for archetypes, so it felt really weird to me.
Yeah.
That perspective, which was prevailing at the time. And so I bounced around a couple of different groups for quite a while, and I did become initiated into the Georgian tradition of Wicca at one point to the first degree. And eventually just kind of went, okay, well, this isn't the path for me, but nothing taking away from the Georgians. It just wasn't my path. So over the course of a couple of years, so this would be about 13 years ago now, I was very happily a ceremonial magician and worshiper exclusively of Anubis, Bost, and a couple of other gods, including Lakios, Lupa, and Rigid. And so when Othin came into my life, he kind of swept everything up and upended my whole life.
When you got that knot.
Yeah. Oh, man. More like him kicking in the door and saying, you're coming with me. And what really shocked me was it happened while I was at prayer with Anubis. And he says, well, our primary relationship here is at an end. Our relationship is going to be going on the back burner. You're going to be working with Othin. And I'm sitting here like in my robe, kneeling in front of his altar. There's incense going, and it took everything I had to scream, what the So it was very shocking, and I was very upset for a while, especially because Othin wanted me to dive right in and start learning the runes and learning heathenry and all this other crazy stuff all at once. It was pretty overwhelming, but I mean, that's Othin. So
thrown right into the deep end. Yeah. Right. So I guess that's kind of bringing us into your spiritual path and what that looks like. What you want to share with us.
So I'm a polytheist and an animist. My polytheism has animism in it, so I believe that there are many gods, and I worship a lot of them. I don't worship all of them because that's a literal impossibility, because I don't even know how many gods there are. But also animism because I believe that everything is, or is at least potentially imbued with some kind of soul, life force, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So my overall perspective is that potentially everything from the computer that I'm talking with you on to the lights to everything in between has some kind of spirit in it, of it, or behind it. The fire that runs in the electricity in the walls are spirits of fire. They call them Eldervater, fire spirits.
Mm.
So, the breath that I'm taking, there is spirit in that. We call that ond, which is the Old Norse word for the term. And there's the implication of pneuma or chi behind that as well.
Right.
So my perspective is Reconstructionism is a methodology that I use to understand the past and apply it to the present. And it informs a lot of how and why I do things. So the common canard that heathenry is the religion with homework is very true, at least for me. But part of my goal is to make it less homework intensive, because homework is not for everybody.
Mm-hmm. No, it's not. We all have our own ways to go at things. And that makes me think about, again, I mentioned to you before we started the chat about this article this piece that you wrote the other day about authenticity and heathenry. And that I'm bringing it up prematurely, but we'll come back to that. But that's kind of what's coming to mind a little bit. So let's talk a little bit about around grandfather fire.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Wow, you're somewhere in the 53rd
57.
episode? 57th. Okay,
Oh, yeah.
wow. Yeah. Wow, exciting. So tell us a little bit about around grandfather fire.
So Jim and I started this podcast, God, 2 years ago now, ish.
Mm-hmm.
And we had worked together on The Jaguar and the Owl. He brought me in as a co-host for that when it was on the Para X radio network. And we worked on that for, I think, a total of 4 years. And we transitioned out of that because in a lot of ways, the format was just really limiting, because it was an hour, it was live, and it was only on shamanism and related topics. So after a certain point, we were like, okay, I think we've explored it in this particular niche as much as we possibly can. We got to start relating it to other stuff. And we were both getting a little burned out, I think. So we took a little bit of a hiatus, and then sometime later, Jim was like, hey, you want to get back into podcasting? I said, hell yes. So we did that for the better part of a year together and had a lot of really great episodes, both together and with guests. And Around the Grandfather Fire was built from the ground up to be kind of I wouldn't say the antithesis, but bringing the best of what Jaguar and the Owl had into a format where we didn't have to worry about language, because I curse like a damn sailor.
Mm-hmm.
So I really just to something I should have asked earlier, is this podcast explicit? Do I need to watch my language?
So it's not yet explicit, but I'm open to the possibilities.
Well, I'll try to curb my language, but long story short, we went with the format we did because we wanted longer form discussions that we didn't see happening either in our own podcasts or others on a lot of the topics we wanted to cover. And we also wanted to talk about the intersection between pop culture and spirituality, comic books, TV, movie, all that kind of ephemera. And for a while there, we had a really good show, but it was lacking something. And then Jim had the great idea of asking Caitlin Stormbreaker to come on the show, which was an awesome choice because she brought an entire fresh new perspective. She had background that neither one of us had. And according to Carr, our voices were putting him to sleep. And Caitlin added in a necessary element of keeping everybody awake.
And she does bring something to the show. I like it both ways. And
Mm-hmm.
I'll be reaching out to Caitlin sometime soon too.
Excellent.
Right. Yeah, it is very much an enjoyable show, and you guys are all over the place. And this is Wider Circles is to be sort of similar, but not. I consider this more of a variety show with all of those elements. So that's very cool. Very
Thank
cool.
you. Yeah, I'm really proud of it because, I mean, around the Grandfather Fire, we could have followed any number of formats, and we said the heck with it and went with our own. And I really appreciate that. Not only the community that's sprung up, because the Discord we have is very active and it presents a really cool way of interacting with our audience, but also of us getting insight into our own practice, because you never quite know what question's going to come up and how that's going to make you reframe your own ideas or thoughts. So our feedback from listeners is an ongoing thing. It's not just during the shows or what have you. So that's been a really important thing.
Right. And I'm looking for a format that's actually accessible, that I can do sort of the same thing for community around Wider Circles, but Discord can't be it yet. They're still working on their accessibility. They do not work so well with screen readers.
Ooh, that sucks.
Right. Yep. Oh yeah, and I've actually been involved with a few events now where we were doing the planning, and the majority of it was taking place on Discord. So I'm constantly off on the sideline going, "Psst, what'd you say?"
Oh, okay.
I need somebody to relay that. Well, here's one of these questions that's just more, I guess, revealing. And it is, what 3 people have been most influential to you in your life?
Well, I can say without putting my wife up on a pedestal, she is one of the most influential people in my life.
Good answer. Good answer.
Well, in no small part, she's why I became a pagan, because I didn't know what was accessible in the area. I was still a Catholic when I went into college, and, and then she said, "Well, if you're interested in exploring this, there's these resources, and we could talk about this." And she eventually got me to explore, because I was still in that kind of in-between stage of wanting to come out of my shell, but not quite sure how to do it. So part of the reason that I'm a pagan is because of my wife. So I owe a great deal of my life to her.
Great.
Second, I would honestly say is my parents, because the upbringing they gave me has informed a good chunk of my groundwork and a good chunk of who and what I am, just by being raised. But also, spiritually speaking, they gave me a very intense appreciation for prayer and ritual and all the accoutrement and the beauty that is found in rote prayer and rote ritual and the discipline of a good spiritual life.
Okay. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
So those are your other 2. I guess a follow-up question is concerning your parents, and how would they describe what it is that you do? Right? I know. That question sprang right into mind.
So what do I do from their perspective? It's just so it's funny you ask that, because Dad and I have had a lot more conversations around this than my mom. But generally speaking, they look at what I do as against their faith, but they also recognize that I serve a spiritual role in my community. I am a priest. I am a spirit worker. They understand the role I serve through their lens as Catholics, even if they don't agree with my religion or where I'm coming from. There's not really animosity per se. It's just, well, we really wish you hadn't done that now. When I first came out as a pagan, I was very fiery about it. And wasn't,
like many are.
Oh, yeah. God. So I was not very respectful at all. And I broke quite a bit of frith that is a good peace and social order with my folks by the way that I came out of the broom closet. There were a lot better ways to have done so. And so it took some time for our relationship to get repaired, both because of our mutual reactions and also because of how damn stubborn I wanted to be about everything.
Yeah. Right.
So I'm very lucky that I didn't completely burn that bridge to the damn ground.
Yeah. 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 And so they're like, they understand what you do. They just wish that you were doing it over there, over with the Catholics. But
I mean, a lot of the stuff that I do when we talk about it, Dad has a very interesting way of thinking about it. When I've talked about some of the things that Odin has had me done, he'll ask the question on occasion, are you sure that was Odin, or maybe it was, was it God? Maybe. I said, well, there's the distinct possibility that I'm wrong, but I don't think so, because your God has a very different voice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep. I'll hold out that I could be wrong, but I really don't think so, because my experiences bear out this is Odin and this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Right. Yep. And I know that you pretty much, well, I shouldn't say I know, but it strikes me as though you approach everything sort of from a scientific method sort of approach. Yeah, because well, again, I'm skipping into some of your other works, but talking about the three legs of the stool and discernment.
I got to give huge props to Jim. His breakdown of spiritual accounting has been so damn useful over the course of my life. Like, for your earlier question, if I had to package my parents as a single person, it would have been Jim being the third one. He has been a serious light in my life.
Yeah, we'll take that.
And his work with me and his ongoing support and love for me has sustained me through a lot of heartbreak and a lot of really rough patches in my life. And so spiritual accounting as a concept, the way he breaks it down is so damn simple, but so effective. I love it.
Right.
Like, to the point of where we now have t-shirts.
Check out I actually, bubble. Right. I didn't know about that. Yes. Need a t-shirt. Oh, I know this one. I almost felt a flinch from this question when I reviewed it with you. What do you wish that you would have known 10 years ago?
Holy shit. There's so much I wish I'd known. So I really wish that I had a lot more of the discernment I do now, both in terms of the process of discernment, like Jim's spiritual accounting breakdown. I wish, like, to hell and back I had that. But I also really wish that I had the breadth of resources and access to those. So, like, one of the books that I'm really working through right now, and it is deep, it is detailed, it's a slog, but it's a really, really good academic book, is The Viking Way by Dr. Neil Price. Really good, really in depth, and also accessible. Like, he does reference stuff from other authors, but it's like, if you read The Viking Way, it's really a self-contained, excellent reference piece on a lot of topics that I really wish I'd had access to. Because some of the heathen material that was out there when I was coming in, I wouldn't say maybe suffered from bad research or from certain ideological point of views. I didn't become a heathen for a while because of the blood and soil crap that was out a lot when I was just exploring paganism. And I wish that I had known about other resources. If I had encountered the trough at a younger age, I might have been a member. There's so many resources that we have access to now, just on the academic level, not to mention all the heathen authors that are out there now. Like Matthias Nordvig's Beginner's Guide to Asatru is really a good resource and a book that I wish I'd had. Likewise, the works of Claude Lacouteau, who is unfortunately passed, his works on spirits in general and of the land, elves, dwarves, his whole life work is really excellent, and I highly recommend anybody that's interested to just pick up damn near any of his books. His books on the dead and on household spirits, the tradition of household spirits, is an excellent piece of work, and I really recommend it to folks. And I wish I'd had access to that when I started off.
That is actually on my list of reading. Yes. Yep.
It's
I need
so
to. Yep.
freaking good.
Yep. Yep. Huge stack of books. Well, see, and that was one of the things that I was going to ask for was
Mm-hmm.
some suggested resources, and there you took care of it.
I also recommend
Hmm.
some older works like the works of H.R. Ellis, or as she came to be known later on, H.R. Ellis Davidson. The Road to Hell, Hel, is something that I've been meaning to pick up, and I really have had it recommended to me a lot. A lot of the stuff that I've read about Hell and Helheim has had connection to this book, but I haven't had a chance to pick it up and start reading it. But her other works, like Myths of the Norsemen and Gods and Myths in Northern Europe, those are excellent starting resources. I don't recommend folks try and hit the Eddas and a lot of the resources starting off because they're dense, they're complicated, and they have a lot of Christian interpolation you have to pick apart.
Right, because most of
So
it's been brought to us through the filtration of Christian priests and ministers and whatnots. Yeah.
yeah, and the other thing that you got to watch out for is classical mythology worming its way in there because Snorri Sturluson was a lawyer and he was classically trained. He wasn't actually a clergy member, to what I understand. He was like a lawyer who was a Christian, so he would have been trained in classical uh, thought and philosophy. So there's bits and pieces of that in there, like Odin and his family come from
Mm.
Troy. And it's like, okay, no, not really, but all right then.
Oh,
So there's a lot of picking apart that people have to do with the primary resources that we have left to us. And you'd probably be better off picking up a book that summarizes and gives you the nitty gritty as opposed to just diving right in without preparation.
right. Get familiar with the with with all the different energies, with all the different gods before you try to jump into the original works. Because some of that stuff, yeah, it is. It's very heavy reading.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
And honestly, for the average heathen, it isn't necessary.
right.
There's this real fetishization in the heathen culture of, well, we're the religion with homework and we're the religion with books. But look, folks, not everybody needs to have an academic background to be able to appreciate the religion. And if that's your barrier for entry, that's a really crappy barrier for entry.
Mm.
Because honestly, if you're actually reconstructing and reviving this stuff, the average heathen couldn't read or write. Like they
Good
weren't
point.
they weren't like sitting down with tomes of this stuff going, oh wow, what book am I going to read today after I do the hay? No, they're going to bed. uh,
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
this is a life way. This is a culture, and if you're going to actually reconstruct it, you have to make it accessible at some point, which is
Right.
part of the reason I'm doing the writing I'm doing.
Yeah. Um. Well, you've covered that. What's your favorite sound?
Oh, hmm.
Was that it? No, wait.
I have to say howling. Wolves howling.
Howling. Okay.
Yep.
The children of the night.
Indeed. What
Uh.
music they make. Thanks, Bella.
Right. So let's talk about your writing. Brought it up a couple times. So I know a lot of it is brought. A lot of the topics are brought by the people who are connected with you on Patreon. Um, so what does that look like? Tell us a little bit about your writing and I did catch that you were out of topics.
Yes, I am actually out of topics. Some of my patrons, I think, are just going through a lot right now, so I don't have as big a volume for this month, which
Hmm.
I'm not complaining about. But I'm also like, folks, you can hit me up. It's okay. Um, but what that looked like, well, for a while there, my blog, I was blogging for 10 years without having launched a Patreon, and I would hit roadblocks in my writing because either I didn't have the words for a particular piece, or sometimes I'd find a topic and I'd write about it really hard on the moment, and then I'd have to go and switch gears, or I had to. A lot of my writing gets done at work when I'm on break. So if I lose a thread somewhere and I can't pick it back up, sometimes the draft stays in my folder anywhere from 6 months to a year under the old system I had. Now with
Hmm.
patrons, I have a deadline, which has been actually really helpful. So I'm producing poetry for them. I'm producing topics, and you can throw as little, I think, as $6 at me and ask for a topic suggestion. So these topic prompts have been really helpful because I know what I want to write about, but I have an expanded palette to work with when it comes to folks saying, hey, could you cover this? Because it's something I might not have considered at all because it's been part of my practice for so long. So it really gives me a chance to tackle subjects that folks actually want to know about and learn about, but they might not have access to through what heathen resources there are out there, or they might just want a different perspective on it.
Right. Yeah. It it kind of reminds me of like journaling prompts um, to some extent, like listener brought on prompts. So, um, ouch. Let's see what outside of that, outside of
Mm-hmm.
the listeners, outside of the patrons bringing the topics to you, what is it that inspires you?
I know this is going to sound pat, but really my God's ancestors in Vatir inspire me because they
Hmm.
formed so much of the core of my life that uh, whether it's writing or singing or whatever I'm putting my mind to, the Gin Regen, the holy or mighty powers, are really the forefront of my life. And then it's my family.
Mm. Mm. Very good. Yeah. You know, and I I think that's as good as answer as any. So, oh, something a little bit more lighthearted here. Three
Yeah.
pagans on tap.
Oh, it's such fun. I love it.
Yes. Yes. Tell us. Tell us. I absolutely
Mm-hmm.
love hearing the reviews on some of the drinks, but I'll let you talk about
Oh, gods, that freaking redstone. Oh, okay. So this started off as a hey, what if we on one of Carr's Sunday chats through three pagans and a cat? He does a weekly Sunday meetup on Zoom, which started just after COVID hit, as a way for folks in the community to connect and say hi and just share a space together. Since so many of us have been social distancing since, so at one point we were like, well, why don't we just, what if we just put this together?
it.
And now we're doing a bi-weekly show where we review different drinks, but we also something that was pretty important to us from the start was to make a mocktail, to make a non-alcoholic drink highlighted during the show. And also, how do we, to kind of take this out of the, well, just a review show, how does this connect with our spirituality? So sometimes, well, every show so far, we've started with a prayer. And this last one where we talked about mead, it was the myth of Kvasir. And we may talk a lot about how we relate to drinking and these drinks in regards to our gods, or we might spend a little bit of time. So every show is different, and it's a lot of fun to put together. I'm really happy that Malik and Carr are doing that, and honestly, if that Carr's doing a good chunk of the back work, like we would not be able to do this without Carr because he is doing all the back work. I'm just showing up and talking. And and out of the three of us, he's got the most experience as a brewer and as a sommelier. And God damn it, I can't remember for the life of me what the beer version of that is. And he's told me a couple of times, but he's got such a breadth of experience, and I really deeply admire him, not only as, of course, somebody that's knowledgeable on brewing, but also just as a person.
Yeah.
And Malik is a wonderful human being. They are really dear and near to my heart. They have experiences with making mead and beer that I just don't as a home brewer, and they have a very unique perspective on flavor and combinations, and the way that they put things is both informative and entertaining for me. Like just listening to these two sit back and talk about a drink is it's expanding my knowledge just by sitting back. Now, if I wasn't getting, completely toasted sometimes, I'd probably retain more.
That's why it's good it's captured on video. Yeah, the last episode, I think it was the last episode, makes me want to try Singularity.
Yes, I want to try that too. That looked
right.
so tasty.
Right. So I think as we move forward into the holidays and stuff, that's going to be on my list. I must try Singularity.
Yeah. Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait for our next episode. I don't even think we've picked a theme just yet. We might be doing beer.
Oh,
so
okay.
this will be fun.
You're like on episode 6, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. Mead was episode 5, and I believe it was rum was episode 4 and vodka episode 3. Mm-hmm.
Right, because I heard Gwyn from Three Pagans and a Cat talking. They were talking about it's nice to actually have some liquor in the house that they want to drink. So, what is this? This is kind of a deep question here. What's the most important thing you've learned in your life? And then the follow-up is, what was your life before that? And what was your life like after that?
I think if I had to boil down the most important thing, it would be Gabo, or gift for gift. Gift for gift, as I call it in Old Norse, is do in all things. That would be like the number one lesson. That whether it's how I treat other people, how I'm treated by other people, the interactions that I have with my genregen, the interactions that I have with my community, all of that has to be based in gift for a gift, gift for gift, or reciprocity, or it's going to fail.
Right. And I was hoping you'd bring that up.
Yeah. And my life before then was a series of me trying way too hard to be everything to people that I cared about. And reciprocity actually made me develop better boundaries when I finally learned how to actually apply it to myself. Because I would really go way further out on a limb than I ought to for people without saying this is where I stand and this is where I need you to come back to me. So it was a lot of me getting up on proverbial ledges for other folks, but being really disappointed when they wouldn't do the same for me, having unrealistic expectations on the one hand, but also on the other, way overextending myself and over. Oh, hi, sweetie.
Umbrella.
Yes, it's an umbrella, sweetheart.
We have a special guest appearance.
It's green.
Yes, it's a green screen, sweetheart. Thank you.
It's green.
Can you go see Mama?
Charlotte, come here, please.
What's Daddy doing?
Daddy's on a podcast, sweetheart.
What's Daddy doing?
Yup.
So cute.
He is. And it's my own fault because I forgot the door was open.
Right. I kind of think it's planned, but anyway.
You did mention earlier you wanted to hear her, so there you go.
Right. Yep. So yeah, that brings almost like a class to mind, like boundary setting through Gabo. Because we have this whole, it's important to have these boundaries, because if you can't have no as a spiritual practice, and we move through doing the things that we don't have the capacity for, then it leads to resentments and it leads to other things within inside of us that we have to work our way through. And if we just have the proper boundaries to know that this is beyond what I care to or what I can do, and your reaction to that, I mean, I can walk you through that, and we can try to understand it together, but ultimately we owe it to each other to know where our boundaries are.
Yeah, I mean, I owe you my gift of boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I don't let you know where that is, you can't really be held responsible if I go, no, it's okay. And you take that extra step where if I had actually laid my bound, and this is not to victim blame. I need to put that out in front. This is not to victim blame.
For sure. Not victim blaming.
No, but this is more personal responsibility of if I say that it's okay, I'm giving you permission to step over a boundary if there's a boundary there. And that is really on me to say, I actually need to keep that boundary. Now, that's not to say in every case that, some boundaries need to just be common sense and we shouldn't have to explain them. But, unfortunately, you have to explain boundaries to certain folks that should be obvious. But
indeed, yes. Yeah.
That being said, in a lot of situations, we overextend ourselves, whether it's, say, the job. One of the boundaries that I had to erect with work very early on was I'm not going to bring this home. Work stays work. So, even nowadays where work will ask me, well, did you read the email? No, I was not in the four walls of the building, and I have no requirement as part of my contract to read the emails outside of a work environment. So no, right. I didn't read them.
Right.
Unless it comes to putting my time in, no, you're not going to be getting that from me. Sorry. You get enough of my life as it is.
Right. If you want me to open that email from home, I have to do the fraction of the hourly billing and everything.
Yeah. Oh, you're not going to pay me for that? Oh, I guess that didn't matter that much to you.
Right. Yes. Wasn't that important. How about crossing hedgerow sanctuary? Because this actually is one of the big reasons that I wanted to ask you to the show, besides the fact that you're Sarenth, is because this is just spirit. This is ecology. This is just all of the things. Tell us.
So this is really where the rubber meets the road. So I talk a great deal on my blog about how it's not enough that we intellectually think about these things. We need to actually go out in the environment and do this stuff. And environment can be your back door, a potted plant. I happen to be really lucky and have access to a community, a wonderful family, the Kavanaghs, who have a ecologically responsible regenerative agriculture, permaculture farm.
Mm-hmm.
And it has been so rewarding partnering with them and with the other members of the board to bring Crossing Hedgerow Sanctuary and Farm to the pagan communities and to the public at large. So we're actually a 501c3. We are registered. We've got all our paperwork in order and everything. What we're working on right now is a lot of the infrastructure so we can start offering sacred space for pagan communities to come and hold workshops and do so much. And this is 20 acres worth of land between the two families that own the land, between my own family and the Kavanaghs, that we're building community space and maintaining community space on these grounds. And so there's about, I think, 10 acres of forest, give or take, and about 10 acres, give or take, of land, and about 2 to 3 of it, maybe 5. I don't know. I didn't actually take a survey, but about 5 of it's actually farmed, and the rest of it has been left by and large to regenerate from overuse from agriculture, from industrial agriculture.
Mm-hmm.
So when the Kavanaghs bought the property, they had to let it lie for a while because it was so saturated with chemicals and crap from industrial farming,
right,
in order to get it back to an organic state. So they've done so much work with the land, and it's really beautiful to see. And a couple of years ago, I met Jean at Ann Arbor Pagan Pride, and she talked to me about her vision for this. And I went, wow, that sounds like something I need to be involved in. And so she, myself, and the other board members, the reason I'm saying the other board members instead of giving their names is because I don't know if I have permission.
I was going to say anonymity. Yeah.
Yep. Um, but the focus of Crossing Hedgerows is a religious community center. It's not necessarily any one theological perspective, pagan wise. And we did that intentionally because we want it to be open and we want it to be accessible to people of different religious backgrounds. We also would like to open the space up to any Black, Latinx, and Indigenous folks who would like to use the space. And again, we're prepping the land so that we can effectively do that. So we're doing a lot of working with the land to make it so we can put permanent structures on there. The big project we're working on with our construction company is um, clearing the land so that we can put these two ponds in to help with the water situation on the property because we're right along Schwartz Creek.
Mm-hmm.
And so when that gets overflowy, it screws up the water balance of the rest of the property. So we're putting in two ponds with this construction company. And our long-term hope is maybe we'll be able to raise fish in there, do some aquaculture, that kind of thing, and provide living examples of how to live with the earth.
Right. Yeah, that's very cool. Yeah, I know that's a big project and a big endeavor. Where's that located?
So we're located in Belleville, and let me find it. I wish I'd pulled up the website because I am terrible with addresses.
Right. Well, I kind of put you on the spot there.
A little bit. CrossingHedgerows.com is where we can be found. We currently, I don't believe we're open for general public. You need to get a hold of us if you want to come look at the sanctuary. Just because of the COVID situation and so many folks. I mean, we're in the middle of a resurgence right now. So I don't believe the land is open right this minute. So if you want to come visit the property, it's probably best to get a hold of us through the crossinghedgerows.com website.
Great. Good to know. I look forward to visiting when I'm leaving my house again someday.
It would be awesome.
Right. Because that's right up my alley. Well, how would you like to be remembered, Sarenth?
I'd like to be remembered for being a good heathen, a good father, a good husband, a good grandfather if I happen to have little ones down the road from our kids, a good person of the community. I'd like to be remembered long, and I'd like to be remembered well. And I'd like to be visited by folks, whether it's your blood relation or not. If I've touched your heart, come to my grave or my mound or whatever we happen to put me in.
Right. That's beautiful. Well, you mentioned if there are grandchildren, if there are great grandchildren, do you have any words of wisdom that you would like to pass down?
You are not your ancestors. You are the latest of their lines, and they live in no small part through you. They are the roots and the trunk. You're the branches. You choose where the leaves grow. They have to trust you, and you have to trust that they will be solid grounding for you. They have to trust that where you reach is a good place to reach. And you have to trust yourself there too. So reach and know that your ancestors are behind you.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I've been doing most of the questions here, asking most of the questions. Is there anything by chance that you've thought that you might want to ask me that you've not had the chance?
So something that comes up pretty frequently in our conversations is issues of accessibility.
Mm-hmm.
How can pagans make their rituals and workshops more accessible to you?
To me specifically, as a blind person, because it would be difficult for me to speak across the spectrum of all the different barriers that we deal with, but I can speak to blindness.
Yeah, I'm certainly not expecting you to speak for everybody, just you.
Right. Our community does really well with it, to be honest. Typically, if I ask, there's only been a few exceptions, but if I ask for a handout to be sent to me via email, like something that's been provided in print in a workshop, a lot of times all I have to do is ask and it can be sent to me. Sometimes I actually have handle on that before it's handed out in the class. If I go through the proper channels. So I think that would be one thing, is to make there be a clearer pathway to obtaining that information. Because usually this has been my life experience. So I know typically I approach the organizer directly and then ask what's the best way of communicating reaching out to these leaders, to these teachers, to these presenters. I think online, one thing that would be helpful is when people are putting graphics, when they're putting things up on the screen, a little bit more detail and explanation. That would be helpful. But again, in person, usually if I'm sitting in the class, I'll smile and wave, and I bring it to their attention that, hey, I'm here. And I will call you out in the middle of your presentation. If you go too long saying, and if you look here, and I'll go, look where? What are we looking at? Ritual-wise, I've never really been in a situation where I had to have someone other than the person I was with that had accompanied me to the event. I haven't had to seek out someone to assist me through ritual yet. But I do believe that will probably happen at some time in the future, and I don't believe it will be a problem. So, I mean, these are the things, is when building ritual, when putting things together, just remember, like, if you're doing something visual, if you're doing something video, pretend there's only audio. Pretend that all of your audience is just picking this up through an audio podcast and that it's not video. So kind of approach it from that direction. And as far as the rest, just be prepared. Be prepared to be asked. It's just one of those things. If we know that we want to have people who utilize wheelchairs, whether they be manual or motorized, if we want them to be able to attend our events, we don't hold them in buildings that are on the third floor with only stairs.
Right.
And then I've even heard some people go, well, we could help pull the person out of the chair. I'm like, you are completely taking someone's autonomy away. We don't do that. So that's the thing, is trying to keep in mind building those pieces into ritual, building those pieces, those elements into classes, and being mindful that we might have these things present. And I think it's really just listening. I think it's just and doing what you just did, asking the people that we know, because most of us, I think at this point in time, know somebody who's visually impaired, or someone who is hard of hearing, or someone who utilizes a wheelchair, or someone who is on spectrum.
Right.
And if we don't have these things in our life, and I don't know how somebody would have walked as far as they have, having not encountered, have not crossed paths, has shared space with these peoples.
Right.
Because we're all over.
Right. And I mean, the thing that a lot of people tend to forget is, like, sight aids, like, glasses.
Right.
Are a real game changer. I take these glasses off, I can't see but 3 inches in front of my face. Everything becomes a blur. And so people tend to forget that, because we have all these corrective measures for folks that would otherwise be in the category of disabled. But the only reason they're not put in that category is because they have these readily accessible options.
I do know several people who, if you say the phrase assistive technology to them, they wear glasses and they still don't know what the word means. You have them on your face.
They're literally wearing them.
Right. So, but that's so normalized. It's one of those things that more people than not, as they progress through life, as they age, the eyes start to not function as well. So more people than not end up wearing some sort of corrective lenses. And so that's the normal thing. I do on occasion run into somebody who's never seen a blind person or met a blind person in life. They've only seen them on TV. And I have to sit with that for a minute. I'm like, wait, I'll talk to you about whatever you want, but I have to sit here for a moment and think about the fact that you've never ran into another blind person. But
Right.
we all have our own different experiences. So,
So one of the things that's coming up a lot in conversations on around Grandfather Fire and other places is, I believe it's called aphantasia, where you don't visualize. You can't. You literally cannot.
right.
And so that's also something that, in terms of accessibility, does come up a lot, because a lot of the books I read on pagan religion, a lot of the books that I read in general rely so much on that inner movie set that is assumed we all have, and it's like a third of the population doesn't, folks.
Exactly. And so we have to work through that different ways. And a lot of times what we're doing in like guided meditations is actually adding the caveat to that see it if you can. If you cannot see that, just know that it's there. And that's only helpful though if you build in enough other pieces of like smell, like the different other elements that they would be experiencing. That's the only way that somebody can actually not see it but know that it's there.
Right. I actually have to hand it to Harry Dresden's author, Jim Butcher, because a lot of the ways that he layers a lot of the ritual spells in his books for potions is a useful way of thinking about including the quote visualization as well as the other sensory components in a ritual. Because when Harry formulates a potion ritual, it's a whisper for quiet, or a certain like the smell of water, or the taste of oil for slipperiness, or the feel of oil. Things like that. Like, he incorporates that very intentionally into his potions, and I'm like, that's a really great way of formulating guided ritual, because like a lot of folks will just run with the visual metaphors and leave a whole contingent behind.
Right. That's interesting. I'm not familiar with that. What was that work again?
The Dresden Files by Jim Butcher.
Okay.
It's urban fantasy. I love it.
I'm gonna have to look into that. Yeah, because I was actually just asked the other day, what is my most used tool? And mine is really visualization. And I guess that throws some people off. But honestly, I start visualizing before I know it. Sometimes people start telling me the story and I have to tell my brain, no, don't look at that. Don't. Gotcha. Just because they're saying it doesn't mean that you need to start forming the imagery. So yeah, that's probably, and I think they were talking more about wand or things like that. In which case, I think even still, it's more of a tangible, intangible, because it's fire.
Right.
Visualization and fire are my two most used tools in my practice, besides my breath. But no, my list just keeps getting longer.
I was going to say the bones, certainly.
The bones, yeah. And yeah, okay. Well, I use a lot of tools.
And that's I like a lot of tools. I'm to the point where my wife's like, could you please not pick up another staff? Thank you.
Right. Yeah.
I have like 3 or 4 around here, because everybody's got to have a collection, right?
My temple is just full of stuff, right? Yes. And then I just have to I'm the caretaker of all the things.
I mean, what really is a difference between just collecting versus spiritual tools for me is, am I actually going to use this, and does this have some sort of significance to the practice?
Right. Otherwise, it's just it's decor.
It's another collection of knickknacks.
Right. Yep.
But they're sacred knickknacks.
Sacred tchotchkes. That's what we have
Mhm.
going on. Well, I mean, is there anything that because you have so much going on, you have so many different projects, your fingers are in so many different pies. Is there anything, if you were doing the interview here, if you were asking the questions of yourself, is there anything that I've missed that you maybe would have asked?
Hmm. That's a really good question. This is not a situation I'm used to being in. I am not used to being in the seat where I'm being asked questions. I'm so used to being on the other side of this.
Right. I think Gwen pretty much had a very similar response.
If I was asking me an interview question, hi, sweetie. If I was asking me an interview question, yeah. Well, actually, a question I don't get asked about very much at all is raising heathen children. So, like, you come here. Come on. Oh, you don't want to come up? You just want to walk? Okay. So,
No cameo?
oh, no, she's on camera.
Oh, okay.
Yep, she is looking at herself in the camera and being adorable as usual.
Hello.
Jack says hi. Can you say hi? No? Okay, that's okay.
Okay, that's fine. I won't ask you to do a plug for the podcast then. So
that is something that I don't get asked very often.
Raising heathen children. So what really stands out about that? Because I was thinking about it wasn't so much about children, but it was more about that you come from a pagan family, and a lot of people come from mixed families and things like that concerning religious beliefs. And
yeah, that in and of itself is kind of unusual because we're like, as far as my contingent of the family, we're all heathen.
Right.
So that presents some interesting. Like, I don't have to explain the gods to the kids; they just get it.
Right.
You know, when I say, okay, it's time for cleansing breath, she generally speaking knows what I'm talking about. And my son's 14 now. And, you know, so he's lived with this his whole life. And there's no question. He's just, you know, he's used to things. So there's so much that is coming into this via Catholicism that I didn't have to handle, or vice versa. He doesn't have to handle as a heathen.
Right.
Because he doesn't have the conversion experience.
Right. The letting go of. And yeah, because there's actually rituals when we convert, or can be rituals when we convert from Christianity into paganism, to let go of that stuff, to not feel some of those guilts and things that we should not have felt all along anyways.
Exactly. I actually had to sit down with Yahweh when I became a pagan, and we had a long prayerful talk, and I asked to be released from my oaths, which, as a heathen, I'm really happy I did, because oaths are really huge.
Right.
I mean, oaths are huge in our, if we're actually, ooh, you okay?
I'm fine.
Okay. Can you go see Mama, please? Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate you. Can you shut the door, please?
Oh, yeah.
Shut the door, please.
I don't.
Oh, okay. So, Mama? Let's see Mama.
Don't.
No? Okay. Oh, okay. So, when I converted, I actually had a sit-down prayer with Yahweh and asked to be released from my oaths. And that for me was really cathartic and very helpful, because I'd been saying the Nicene Creed since I could speak.
Right.
Because it's part of the ritual, and it's an affirmation of the oath you make as a Catholic.
Right.
And it's a really big thing to be released from that oath. And as a pagan who was a very devout Catholic, to give up salvation. You know, I think over the years you forget how impactful that understanding of enlightenment of that salvation narrative is. Not really enlightenment, but the salvation idea and understanding is. And it's not to say we don't have savior gods of our own. I mean, one of Dionysus's epithets is Soter, or savior.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So, but it's not salvation in the same sense. It's not salvation in terms of like your eternal soul being saved. It's like, no, like Dionysus saved me from falling off this cliff.
Right. Yes.
Or Dionysus saved me from the error of this or that. Yes, honey, I know. It's a very exciting green screen. Thank you. Okay, we're going to shut that. Oh, there we go. So, yeah. So the giving of that up and accepting a new path and new gods and a new worldview is really revolutionary. And I think it's important we mark those things.
Right. With a rite of passage. Right. Because it's different. You're basically taking, unless you end up merging the two, you're moving from one worldview, from one cosmology to another.
Arguably, becoming a Christo-pagan, you're expanding the worldview in a fundamental way.
Indeed. Yes. Yep.
I mean, that's
I never
my
fought the
understanding.
Christo-pagans. When we talk about the Christian faith, I believe that Jesus is a good guy. It's many of the followers that I have issues with. Because if the religion were based on just the teachings of Jesus and just the words of Jesus, it would look totally different than what it does.
Yeah. Thanks, St. Paul.
Right. Exactly. And we won't even dig that apart because there's all kinds of new talk about Paul. So really, he needed to pick up a few self-help books or something. I'm not exactly sure. So yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up. That you brought up the heathen children and the fact that their worldview is always going to have been this. Now, if they choose at some point in time down the road to move to something else that seems to fit them better, that's a different story. But at least at this point in time, they came up in paganism. They came up in the heathen faith. So,
and that for me was really important for a couple of reasons. Besides, it's the understanding that there is nothing inherently wrong with sharing our religion with the next generation. And if you have hesitation around sharing your religion with kids, you really need to think about why that is.
Right. What is this religion? Exactly. Yes.
I mean, because unless there is an intentional sexual element to the rituals you perform, there's really nothing that I think, especially in heathen religion, as I understand it and practice it, there's really nothing that should be inaccessible to kids.
Right.
I mean, some folks get a little weird about how, well, your Freyr statue has a big dick on it. Well, yes, and there's nothing wrong with a big dick or a small dick or any other size. He just happens to sport one, folks.
Yes. Yep. Came into the world with it. Let go of the Victorian puritanical garbage. Not that we need to go and wave our tools around at the polling places on election day, but some people apparently are going to. Oh, wow. So, I mean, before we wrap up, Tim, I want to make sure I know that we opened up and you told people how to find you online, but I would like you to go back over that again.
Yeah. So you can find my work at sarenth.wordpress.com. You can email me at sarenth@gmail.com. If you want to support me via Patreon, it's patreon.com/SARENTHODINSSON. And if you want to see Around the Grandfather Fire, we are on pretty much every podcast app you can think of, and we're also on anchor.fm. Three Pagans on Tap is on YouTube, and we also have a Facebook page. So if you want to check us out, we do live vlogs. And if you have a request or an idea, so both Around Grandfather Fire and Three Pagans on Tap have Discord servers. So if you have ideas, join up and start throwing ideas at us, or hit us up on Facebook, because both of those ways are open for us.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Tim.
Absolutely.
Sarenth. All right. Bless you, and I hope that you'll come back on the show.
Absolutely.
Right. I'm always looking for contributors, and I think that you would make a great person to come on and help to talk about heathenry and help to bring that out to the greater pagan population. So
Happy to.
thank you.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you.